Hey everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Quality Talks Bitesize series. Last episode, we looked at the top tips for interviewers. Before that, we had Eamon Droku on talking about his experience as a candidate, and he provided a lot of sort of insights into his experience of going through the interview processes and obviously his tips around how to best prepare for interviews. And in this episode, we've got another special guest who I'll introduce in a moment. And we're going to be talking about his journey through the recruitment process, tapping into some really interesting analytics that he gathered through the time that he was looking for work. And he will also be telling you about his success story because, great news is he's now in a new role. But before we get into that, before I introduce our special guest, I just want to say something, right? So Chris isn't here today. I'm going to put it out there. He's off playing golf for his county. So, that's where his priorities lie, people, right? He chose to play golf rather than be here recording on the podcast. So next time you see him in person, give him some stick from me, all right? But yeah, so anyway, let's crack on into this episode. I'm going to introduce our guest now. So our guest, Dalbir Sehmbi. Welcome, Dalbir. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Stu. Very well, thank you.
Good, great to have you on. So we met officially. We met a couple of Ministry of Testing Londons ago, didn't we?
That's right. Yes.
But I think you've been following the podcast for a little while now. But we got chatting, and yeah, I think you at that event you did a 99-second talk talking about your experience over the last several months around sort of job hunting and really interesting insights that you've gathered through analytics and data, and we're going to tap into that today and talk a little bit about that. But before we do, Dalbir, do you just want to sort of introduce yourself properly for me?
Yeah, sure. My name is Dalbir Sehmbi. I've been almost 20 years in the software testing industry now. I started my career off in a test lab, worked my way up through executing test cases, writing test cases, then into automation, followed by some leadership roles as I've been a QE manager, QA lead, and now I'm currently a QA manager.
Excellent, nice, and congratulations on, because you've recently started that role, haven't you? So congratulations on landing your new role.
Thanks. It's only been 2 weeks, but yeah, it's going well. It's going
2
good.
weeks.
Good company.
The first few weeks are the best ones because you can ask anything and you can get away with it. Because
I'm actually reading a book called 30, 60, 90 days, and I'm in the discovery stage. So, like you say, you can ask anything. Yeah,
you can ask anything, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So Dalbir, obviously, when we met, I didn't actually know about your journey. It wasn't until you stood up and did this 99-second talk and shared your insights and stuff. I was like, that's really cool, right? And it was kind of like, for me, it's like it made sense to bring you on the pod whilst we're doing this sort of bite-sized series all around interviews specifically, but how we can talk about how you kind of use all that data to improve and prepare yourself and keep applying for roles and just and you've also written an article on LinkedIn which we will tap into the show notes, so we'll link it in the show notes so people can read the actual the LinkedIn article. But yeah, Dalbir, just sort of, I'm going to hand over to you to kind of talk about your journey over the last sort of few months or more, and what you did with sort of gathering those analytics around, how many roles you applied for, look, man, you know all this, right? I don't need.
Okay.
I'm going to hand over to you, and you crack on.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this really started from Ministry of Testing. I was actually, Gary Shannon got in touch with me, said, would you like to do a 99-second talk? I was like, yeah, okay. I could talk about my kind of job hunt experience. And I actually went there and I wrote the actual 99-second talk about, I was going to plug, does anybody have any companies looking? Can they, refer me or anything? I was actually going to be, that's what the original article was about. Yeah. However, it changed. I think it was about 2 days before I was going to be talking, and I had to change the ending to say I've now got a role. What I found amazing was how it resonated so deeply with so many people. There was a lot of people going through similar situations, and I never knew it. I just thought it was myself and didn't realize that there's a lot more people who are in the same boat. So I was made redundant back in September 24, and I've been made redundant previously, and previously I got a job within about 2 months. And me being probably naive, I would say, I thought it's me the same. Yeah, about 3 months I'll find a job.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. It took about seven months before I found the role I'm in now. It was a lot of pain, a lot of learning I had to do during that time. So as part of my redundancy, I had a careers coach, and my careers coach was really helpful.
Yeah.
Kind of talking, signposting me to some of the articles that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Updating my CV. They also had a CV writer for me. And they looked at my CV and said, my CV is great. And probably one of my first tip is probably make your CV ATS friendly, because I think I did about 150 applications or just over.
Wow.
And I've called it panic applications. It's a point where you find out that the redundancy is happening.
Yeah.
And to the last day, you're actually working. And I did about 21% of my applications were during that time. And I got rejected probably on most of them, nearly all of them. And it was probably because they weren't going through ATS at that point.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So CV writer helped me update my CV and to make it more ATS friendly. But even then, I kept rewriting my CV, and I think total time was about 7. I probably rewrote it about 7 times. But what I was doing as part of my application, so I was actually tracking every single application I made. So I would, it might sound a bit geekish, but every application I would create a folder for them, have the CV stored. So the CV was slightly tweaked for each application.
Yeah.
And I'd save that in a certain folder, and I'd put all of this information in the spreadsheet as well. So I was recording information like the company name, the job title I was applying for, even the job description in text. It was saved in the spreadsheet. That was probably me just being worried that the job description may disappear somewhere. I've also had a PDF copy of it, but just in text, just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah. And then I would also track if I could find the contact person. If I had a contact there, whether it was through HR or the actual hiring manager, and I also track the status and when I applied, how I applied, and I'd set myself a timer for about 10 days for a follow-up. So if I never heard anything, I would have a little alert to notify that I need to follow up this application.
Yeah.
So that's what I was tracking.
Dalbir, just to jump in there. So what was it that kind of triggered you to even do that? Because when we spoke, you were surprised that other people weren't doing this kind of thing, right? So what? And I admit, I've never done it. I've never,
Right.
and I've been in that same position where did I apply for that role? I can't remember now. I'm going to apply again just in case, and or you don't hear from a role for ages, and you go, oh, I completely forgot I'd actually applied for that. So what was it that kind of initially drove you to start collecting that data?
Like you say, it was to make sure that you remember who you've applied to, because there's times when I've applied for a role directly with a company, and then a recruiter's got in touch and saying, have you heard of this company? And I used to think I've heard of the company. I can't remember if I've applied or not, or I just know of the company.
Yeah.
So I started to take, it started off being note form and then just put it into a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And I'm a person that loves spreadsheets. So spreadsheet was a go-to place.
Yeah.
Just so I could track and know what stage I got to. So if I was getting pushed forward, or if I had communication with a recruiter, because that would go into there for a job that the recruiters put me forward to, I was noting down the conversation we had, so I knew what was happening. So when I follow up, I kind of knew what I would talk about.
Yeah.
And what chase up on that application and see if there's been any progress.
I like the knowing how long it's been since you applied and having that sort of notification to say, oh, it's been 10 days. Yeah, I probably should just follow up on this and find out what's going on. Because like you say, so many applications just fall off the cliff, don't they? And like, because so many people are applying, especially in the current climate. You know, you said there around how, you know, I don't think you were naive at all, Dalbir, by the way, when, you know, thinking you're going to land a role, because we all think that, right? We all have confidence in ourselves. You know, a month goes by, 2 months goes by, and then you start thinking, okay, maybe this isn't going to be as easy. And some of that self-doubt starts creeping in as well, you know,
Yes.
from experience over the years. So yeah, I don't think you were naive at all. I think, you know, yeah, I think that having those follow-ups as well was really clever.
Yeah, it seemed to help with the application. However, I mean, you mentioned not falling off the cliff. I got ghosted 52% of the time,
Wow.
and the other 48% was rejections. A straightforward blank, sorry, you've not been selected this time,
With
but
no
thanks for your
feedback.
applications. Yeah, no feedback. And they were the ones. I mean, they were the ones that I didn't make it to interview stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you do get ghosted, and that's hard to take.
Yeah.
And you've just got to remember that you're when recruiters are looking at CVs, they've got a lot to go through. So you know, I think recruiters sometimes get a bit of a hard time, but they've got like, you know, some jobs could be over 100 CVs to go through.
Yeah.
Now they probably have about 3 minutes to look at each CV to make a judgment whether that CV is good enough, and some do slip through. I had a role where a recruiter missed my CV, but I did my usual due diligence and chased up, and sent my CV again. And they were basically agreed that if they saw my CV, they would have put me through straight away. So the
Yes.
chasing up does help,
Yeah.
because
Massively
sometimes
so.
you slip through. So just following up does help, and it also helps to keep your mind on the keep your name on top of the recruiter's mind, so that they do remember you.
Yeah.
I found that helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, you're right. You know, recruiters haven't got an easy job, whether they're internal recruiters or third party recruiters. It's a difficult, you know, role
Yes.
to be doing, and they do get you know, a lot of bad press, and unfairly. So, you know, I'm sure you do. I know a lot of really good recruiters out there, you know, and both within organizations and third party recruiters as well. You know, experiences that I've had with a number of different people have been, you know, superb. And we know Gary's very, he's a
Yes.
bit of a special guy in a good way. He's a very special guy, how committed he is to the cause and stuff like that. But, you know, there's others out there that, you know, also take their job very seriously and try, you know, want to connect with people and stuff. But, you know, your point there about the chasing up, then, because CVs do slip through the net, that's a really good example of why it's so important to do it. And yeah, if you don't know exactly what you've applied for, you can't do the chasing, right? So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's having that targeted message to say I've applied for this role on this date, with all that information.
yeah,
Without that, it's kind of a blank email, and it probably just get ignored.
yeah,
Yeah, I have. So so going back to recruitment agencies, I did actually contact 68 recruitment agencies, and I built a strong connection with 12. And I think that that's really important to have that rapport with a recruitment agent,
yeah.
because they get to know you on more of a personal level rather than two sides of an A4.
Mm,
And I think that makes a big difference where you can, you know, there were some recruitment agencies where we were just having a normal friendly conversation, not
yeah,
necessarily about any roles they had, but we built up that rapport where we got to know each other. And they're the ones that were also helpful in reviewing my CV. Just when things got a bit tough, they were there to kind of offer a supporting ear. They were in agreement that the software testing market, especially for senior leadership, was tough at the moment.
mm,
They could see it getting better, but it was going to take time. It was just having that advice from people that are talking to businesses out there. So it was really refreshing to hear. But that was only because I built a good, strong connection with them.
and you know what, Dalbir, that's really hit on something that I've thought about before, but it sort of brought it to life a bit more for me. The first interview you have isn't with the company that's recruiting, it's with the recruiter, right? And it might not be a formal kind of interview in terms of, oh, this is your first stage, but you are sort of trying to build that relationship. You're trying to, you know, sell
Trying to
yourself.
sell yourself, yes.
You're trying to sell yourself at that stage, right? So if you're able to build those connections and, build a really good relationship with that recruiter, and that recruiter's then really confident in recommending you and putting you forward for these roles, that's a massive plus.
Yeah.
So taking the time to do that is really important.
Yeah, because I mean, they're probably going to get 100, 200 applications for a
Yeah.
role, but if your name's at the top of their head and you've built up that rapport,
Yeah.
then they've got more chance of going, oh, I remember this person
Yeah.
to put forward. Yeah, so that bit's helpful. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So just on, obviously, I mean, you mentioned there that obviously getting those rejections and that can be really hard. But I think reading you through your article, how many interviews you had? It was 11 interviews,
Yes.
5 final interviews, and then obviously
Yes.
then finally you obviously landed your role. But through that time, there was obviously a level of, sorry, you're not quite the right person, etc., etc. How did the data that you were gathering, did that in any way help you then sort of prepare for the next interview? Were you sort of getting the feedback and gathering that information as well and using that as a springboard to the next one and to the next one?
Yeah. So I mean, so I was gathering kind of the questions that were asked, the kind of style,
Right.
and
Okay.
I was collating kind of the questions that were being asked and then rewriting answers on like how best to answer that question. Because when you're in an interview, sometimes you can be nervous and you could be
Cool.
you could struggle kind of expressing yourself and putting your viewpoint across.
Yeah.
But just making notes of those questions and like bullet point answers rather than full sentences, because you don't want to sound like you're reading something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just bullet points about how better you could answer that question. And that helped as well, and that was all linked into the folder structure I had with my interview. So they all went to the notes on that, and it was also so I can actually give a couple of examples of some interviews
Yeah,
I had.
please. Yeah, go for it.
There was one interview. It was I won't mention company names, but I got to the final stage.
Yeah.
It was for
They'll know who they are. Don't worry, Dalbir. When this goes out, they'll be listening, I'm sure. Who
yes,
knows?
probably, yeah. It was actually for a head of QA role, and I got to the final stage.
Yeah.
And just before I was going to have the final stage interview, I got a phone call saying, "Oh, actually, we've already offered the role to somebody else, so we're not going to do the final interview."
Okay.
That was very disappointing
Yeah.
because I'd never got a chance to put myself across. So they never had a chance to actually compare me with whoever got the role.
Yeah.
But what I did learn from that was I believed I was good enough for that role, and
Yeah.
it was just a matter of I had all my prep. And I also emailed. I got in contact with the HR person at the company just to express that my disappointment.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed. It did get me down because that was hard to take. I didn't get a chance to put myself forward at the final stage. But I used that to kind of give me a boost to say, actually, I can get these final interviews. I can go all the way through the process to the final
Yeah.
stage. I just need that one person to, give me that opportunity. And that was a tough pill to swallow. So, and that's how tough the market is, really, where, you're getting rejected. They're offering roles to somebody they've just interviewed rather than trying to interview everybody and then making a decision. But yeah, so that's how brutal it was. I think one of my another example I'd like to share is it was a first round interview at a company, and so all of my prep, we can talk about the prep in a minute, but all my prep was about kind of the tell me, kind of an opener.
Yeah.
This interview, they went straight into questions, and it was the most simple question, and it was a question of, what does quality mean to you? And it caught me completely off guard, because I thought they'd open, and I know you've mentioned in some of your podcasts about keeping it friendly, smile, and kind of, break down the nerves and stuff, but there was none of that, and I went in there very nervous. I also went in nervous because I applied for the job, and then I found an old friend that worked there, and they helped, they kind of pushed my application as well.
Yeah.
And so I thought I needed to owe them and do a good job in the interview process. So I think I went in there very nervous, and I just stuttered, and I really struggled on that. And that interview caught me off guard. So while it was a really bad interview for myself, it caught me off guard. But what I learned was that there are other ways of interviewing. So there's not the usual tell me about yourself and then pick something from your CV and you kind of discuss that. So what I learned from that was there are, everybody has different ways of interviewing. So be prepared. Think about the industry you're working in. So software testing, knowing, stuff like, what makes a good software tester, what is quality, how, looking at the role, see how you could do certain things in that job description. And another interview I had was they actually, and I know, again, listening to some of your tips as well, that you were talking about that, always allow time for questions, either it's throughout. One interview experience was they opened with, do you have any questions for us? They don't like to leave the questions to the end. So they opened with me asking questions, and to kind of, again, help settle the nerves.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good way of approaching it as well. I think it's just giving the candidate the option to ask the questions up front, if they've got any to start with, is a nice sort of way to, like you say, settle the nerves a little bit. As long as you keep that flow and you allow them to ask throughout as well, because they might have a question at that point. Like, I haven't at the moment, but I might have later. But just coming back to the what does quality mean to you question, it's not the simplest question in the world, because if it was, then companies would be smashing it out the park, right? That's all I'll say.
So well, I'd tell people to refer back to your work that you've done.
Well, anybody wants to know, just go and watch episode 2 of this podcast when we talked about what is quality, and we could have been talking for days. That's all I'll say. It's definitely not an easy question, and it's one that I always like to ask, but definitely not at the start. So how sort of, obviously you talked there about that's like the lessons you learned through going through those interviews, and obviously collecting the questions that were being asked, and how did that then play into your prep? Because knowing that there's so many different types of interviews, styles, and like that first 10 minutes could be almost like a lottery, right?
Yes.
Because I'm like you, right? I generally would go into an interview thinking, oh yeah, they're going to open up with a bit of tell us about yourself, and and if it is a curveball, you're a little bit like, ooh, okay. So how did that actually then help you prepare?
So most of my interviews were all of my interviews were virtual. So I started to have some notes up on my screen, just on the side, so that if there was those kind of questions, I could, quickly scroll through my notes and go, okay, it's about around this. And that's the way I could then answer it, by just looking at my prompts.
Nice. Having those prompts. I like that.
Yeah. And again, it's like when you go into an interview face to face, you're allowed to take some notes with you. You might take your CV with you. So it's just the same thing, really. Just have your notes up on screen. But I was just going to say, but please don't read. I think you're saying very monotone if you're reading through it.
Yeah. I'm Dalbir, and I'm you don't want to do that. But actually, you'd be surprised at how many people don't realise that they can take notes into interviews, right? And I've been doing some mentoring with a number of people recently, and it's something I've said, always have some notes, but be honest and say, look, I've got some notes. So if you see me looking down, I've just got some notes that just are prompts for me to around certain topics and stuff like that. It's I like the idea that you've then used that and created your prompt so that if you do have that curveball of, a different style or a different opener, you can then flow into
Yes.
it. So that's
Yeah, absolutely.
nice. Cool. So obviously you were successful. You've recently started a new role, as we talked about at the start. Is there anything any major tips that you want to sort of share to the broader community out there that are listening right now, just that you've learned through your experience? I know you tapped into a little one earlier, but
Yes.
yeah, and they are in your article as well. Well, some of them are. You may have way more that you've got,
Yeah.
you want to share, but
Yeah.
yeah, what sort of tips have you got for people through your learnings?
So I think the first one is to customize your CV for each role. You don't have to go and rewrite it all. It's just, play around with the summary, maybe the skills, change some bullet points around, maybe just to make, highlighting the top points, because as we mentioned earlier, recruiters, and whether they're internal or third party, they may only get a few minutes to look at your CV. So you want to really make it stand out so it catches their eye. So they want to read more and learn more about you. The other thing is, make sure your LinkedIn's polished, because every time you apply, I saw every time I applied for a job, you'd see a recruiter try to look at your profile. So you want to make sure your LinkedIn profile tells the same story as your CV, and just make sure your LinkedIn's up to date. So a couple
I
of
look at LinkedIn as being an extension of your CV. So your CV
yes,
is almost like an intro. Go and have a look at my LinkedIn, and you'll find out way more about me from there. But it needs to connect. It needs to sync up, like you say.
yeah.
Yeah,
So they've got to tell the
absolutely.
same story, because I mean, a CV is standard is 2 pages really,
Yeah,
but a LinkedIn profile you can put as much or as little as you want.
yeah.
So it gives you a better chance to sell yourself. Um, the other tip, I think, is it's a really one that resonated with me a lot, was don't make job hunting a full-time job. I was spending 9 to 5 looking at jobs, thinking I had to be on the job boards every day, applying for the jobs, chasing up other recruiters. But yeah, so what I mentioned in my article is celebrate small wins. Celebrate that
Mm,
you put in an application today, or you spoke to a recruiter.
yeah,
Set yourself goals, and then make time for things that you love. I at the time I was looking, my son was 4 months old, so I got to spend more time with my son.
that's
Otherwise,
amazing. Yeah,
I'd be sat in my office applying for jobs.
yeah,
But I made most of that time as well. The other tip is to leverage your network. So there's again, something my careers coach was saying was the hidden job market, and that's through LinkedIn.
yeah,
And you're reaching out to your connections, and asking them, do they know of any companies that are looking for jobs, or can they support you? And they're really people that you can you have a link with, or a good connection with. And you may send out 20, 30 connection requests, and somebody may come back and say, oh, actually, I know of a company. um,
yeah.
this actually happened to me after the first miniature testing meetup. It was actually in the pub.
Ah, well, there
I
you
was
go.
speaking to somebody.
Yes, yeah.
She basically referred me to a job.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so you don't know who you're going to talk to, who you're going to meet. It might be your neighbours. It might be your friend or somebody you bump into at the bus stop. But it's worth just kind of talking about what you're looking for. You never know
Yeah,
where your next opportunity can come from, and that's kind of the hidden job market is what I like to call it. And also, it was a comment I got from Vernon Richards. I met
no,
him
not
at
Vern. Oh no, we don't talk about Vern
sorry,
on this show. Oh no,
he,
love you,
sorry, I
Vern.
have to mention him because I met him at miniature testing Cambridge.
Yeah,
And just started to talk to him and stuff, and it's like I was trying to get myself more out there, and
yeah,
like to widen my search, to widen my visibility, I would say.
yeah,
And he just said to me, just post something on LinkedIn, just comment, and if you don't want to post anything, just comment at least. Liking's okay, but it doesn't give you the visibility. It's really trying to work with the LinkedIn algorithm. So start commenting, posting, and that's where I started to comment and post more. I've done 2 articles now, and it just helps with your visibility, and your reach.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
and I think the other one to shout out is about like going to the Ministry of Testing. I mean, if I didn't go to the Ministry of Testing, I would never have done the 99-second talk.
Yeah.
I may not have landed the job I've got, and I would never have been on, had an opportunity to be on a platform like this. So
yeah. Shout out to Ministry of Testing. Shout out to Gary Shannon for launching the London meetups. They're awesome. But shout out to everybody that organises the meetups across the country, and not just across this country, right? In other countries as well.
Yes.
The whole community of Ministry of Testing is awesome. So if you're not part of it, definitely look it up. Definitely be part of it. Like Dalbir says, right? Opportunity can like come and out of the blue if you're a part of a great community such as that. So yeah, awesome.
Yes.
Dalbir, I'm sorry, man. We're out of time. We're literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're out of
Wow.
time. Is there anything else you want to share before we drop? Anything else? I'll give you another minute if you've got one.
I should be more prepared for this one because I knew what happened to Chris last time. I should have been more prepared. Well, I mean, one thing I found after doing the talk and the article, after doing my 99-second talk, I have been actually sharing my experiences with others who needed help, who are in the same boat and who needed help. So I was just trying to. It was my way of giving forwards as well, because I've received lots of help, and I was just trying to my way of giving forwards. Yes,
that's amazing. Yeah, and long may that continue with you and others as well. The more we can help each other, the better. Yeah, this has been great, Dalbir. Your journey's been great. I think and to have you on the pod, sharing that experience. We'll share the article as well in the show notes, as I say. Everybody follow Dalbir. He's got a great story to tell. He, as I say, he's sharing and helping others now as well. So yeah, thank you again for coming on. And no doubt we'll get you on again very soon. But that is all for this episode of Quality Talks Bitesize. So again, thank you, Dalbir, for joining. We've got one more episode in this series, and we'll be focusing in all around the recruiter side of things. So we touched on this a little bit earlier when we were sort of talking about recruiters, but yeah, we'll have a special guest on in a couple of weeks for that episode as well. So again, thank you everybody for joining. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share with your networks, and yeah, join us again on another edition of Quality Talks Podcast. Take care, everyone.